Hi, everyone, and welcome to Pride in Our Workplace presents Maintaining Momentum in Social Justice. My name is Cheryl Katon. I am the president of Pride in Our Workplace, and today I am the moderator for this fascinating, invigorating, and sometimes challenging discussion about maintaining momentum on social justice causes in and around the workplace. We have some wonderful panelists who we'll introduce a little bit later. So they're here with us today, and we're all ready and excited to share our perspectives and share our thoughts and hear your thoughts and your questions. So it's going to be a great day. Happy Wednesday to everybody. There we go. So Pride in Our Workplace. We hope that everybody is, follows us on all of our social media platforms and attends these events when you can. We have, our mission is right there. It's a volunteer-run organization, a nonprofit that's really been around for 16 years. And as the need and support from corporation and LGBTQ employees have grown over those years, so has Pride in Our Workplace grown to meet those needs. Certainly early in Pride in Our Workplace history, conversations with HR departments around spousal benefits and ultimately marriage equality and those types of things in the workplace related to work experience were heavy in the Pride in Our Workplace agenda over those years. And now we look at items like this, things around social justice, things around the trans community, LGBT community in general, employment concerns. Those are the topics that we address. And we're very grateful to all of our sponsors that support our work and also support it not only financially, but also support it with their leadership so that they are either asking the questions and then we try to find the experts in the community to help us answer those questions. And sometimes they provide the expertise, and there's companies out there who are really doing tremendous work. And we're so grateful that they're not only willing to share their contributions with Pride in Our Workplace, but they also share their content so that other companies and other employees can benefit from all of our learning together. And so some of our sponsors are listed right there. Thanks so much. And today, what we want to cover, so great, more folks keep joining. So today in our conversation, we want to really gain an understanding into the current climate, which sometimes can be overwhelming. So we'll just talk about those things and how folks bring that current climate into their workspace, how it impacts them as individuals, and how individuals are what make up companies. We want to understand the opportunities we have to leverage our individual and organizational resources to help support marginalized communities. We specifically focus on the LGBTQ community, but there's lots of intersections with other marginalized communities, and that is something that comes up often in these discussions because people are carrying that multiple identities and they're carrying that into the workplace. So this is certainly an LGBTQ focused group, but feel free to ask questions, and to our panelists, feel free to offer insight and advice and thoughts and experiences from multiple identities that you might carry. And then demonstrate how HR and DEI initiatives can align internally to create environments that prioritize inclusion for our LGBTQ employees. Ultimately, that is really what the Pride in Our Workplace has done for 16 years, is really help HR teams and help employees really benefit from a more inclusive work environment. And today is just one of those many topics, and we hope that people can walk away with some insight, some help, a little bit of support, maybe a friend or two to be able to lean on in these tough times. Social justice, it is clearly something that is something that we talk about all the time at Pride in Our Workplace and in all of our work environments, and something we talk about in our day-to-day life. When we think about social justice and what it is, for the most part, we use this definition. Obviously, companies have been called to do more social justice work in the past I mean, really, I feel like in the past 5 or 10 years, certainly, but even longer than that, that sense of a corporate citizenship has really grown, and it has grown beyond simply corporate philanthropy. And it really has started to create a corporate identity, which is carried by those staff members, and that creates its own issues. And so then every time we go on to a new chapter, it opens up more and more conversation and more opportunities to learn and grow. I hope that everybody is at those from time to time. Those rallies are super important, but that is, we don't want to think about that as, rainbow washing or just like, hey, we're going to go out to these rallies, we're going to go out to these pride events. The social justice for corporations and for individuals goes beyond carrying a sign, although that is super important part of how that works. And then connected to the social justice and the things that people bring into the workplace, I think it's important that we talk about community trauma and we have a basic understanding of how that works. There are some stats that'll come up, but it's shocking how many people are carrying around trauma, which is really takes their emotions and puts it right at the edge of their right under the skin. And so it doesn't take much to really to trigger that, to really create an impact with folks, negative and potentially positive, based on what's going on out there and whatever identities we hold. So understanding that trauma that people might be carrying, I think, is very important, and how widespread it is. 20 years ago, I mean, I'm in my early 50s, and people did not talk about trauma. It was something that nobody experienced when I was a kid, which is obviously not true. People just didn't talk about it. And now we talk about it more, but we're all learning at the same time. It's just part of our growth. I thought we'd put this slide up there just because this is an average of where each state is dealing with gender affirming care or gender identity laws, bills and laws. So some of these are represented, these colors are representative of bills as well as laws that have actually passed, to sort of create this color of like, here's where folks can feel comfortable to be themselves, and or here's where folks are uncomfortable if they are trans or non-binary. There are current concerns with the entire LGBTQIA plus community. The trans and gender non-binary folks are the ones that are in the news most prominent, and the majority of the actual policies both being proposed and passing are geared towards discriminatory policies around LGBTQ, around trans and non-binary folks. And here are those stats that I mentioned a little while ago. Again, I don't like to read the thing. I know that folks can read these, but I just think it is important for us to realize that our colleagues are bringing, to these degrees, to this percentage, these attitudes and these experiences with them into the workplace, whether that's the folks that we are answering to, the folks that answer to us, our peers, our friends at work. This is really, where folks are at right now. It's a fascinating thumbnail. I love that 75% of millennials would take a pay cut to work for a socially responsible company. I find that to be a real testament to people bringing their values into the workplace, and workplaces trying to reflect those values of their employees. I think that's a fascinating stat. And here are our panelists. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because I want you to hear their voices instead of mine all the time. I'm going to start to my left. Ev, why don't you give a little bit of an introduction of yourself and your background?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Cheryl. Thank you, Carly and Pride in Our Workplace, for hosting this event and for inviting me. My name is Evnen. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a white, Jewish, Ashkenazi person who is originally from Lincoln, Nebraska, lived in Boston for about 10 years, and now lives in Denver, Colorado. I do a lot of stuff professionally. I've never been good at sitting at a desk from 9 to 5. So I have my own company called MaeBright Group. We work with primarily nonprofits and state agencies, though also for-profits, to help them better provide a welcome and support for their LGBTQ employees and people accessing services. I also consult with the Organizational Equity Program at Boston Trinity Connects. And then I also do a lot of Jewish youth education work, which is one of my favorite things. I get to run a youth group for trans Jewish teens, and they are some of the best people I know. So yeah, really, really excited to be here.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. I am very appreciative of the work that you have done for the LGBT community in general and for the trans community. It's great to have you here. Thanks so much, Ev. All right, and next, I'm going to hand the microphone, so to speak, over to Adrianna Boulin. Adrianna, take it away.
Thanks, Cheryl, and thank Pride in Our Workplace and all of you for being here and joining us together. It's so great to be in your presence. My name is Adrianna. I use the pronoun she and her, and I identify as human, Black, queer, woman, Jamaican, and a lover. And my work focuses on authenticity, healing, health equity, and community engagement. And I am the Director of Community Impact and Engagement at Fenway Health in Boston, and also the President of Boston Pride for the People.
And Adrianna, today you are representing Boston Pride for the People in particular.
Yes, thank you, Cheryl.
Outstanding, thanks. And third, but certainly not least, or last but not least, however that saying goes, Natanja.
Thank you. And I just want to also give my thanks for allowing me to be here as an ally and someone who's also learning and on this journey. So I am Natanja Oquendo. I use she, her pronouns. I am the executive director of the Boston Women's Fund. But in I think I have been an activist at heart for most of my life. I am biracial. I identify as a Black woman because that has been my experience. I feel like I always have to say that because someone will come up to me and say, well, why Black and not biracial? Because that's been my experience. But I'm super happy to be here. The Boston Women's Fund has done a lot of work over the last couple of years since I've been there to really be explicit about including gender expansive individuals in both our work, but also in our mission and our vision. So we envision, along with our partners, a world where power, opportunity, and access exists for those persistently marginalized, regardless of their gender identity or gender expression. And I hope that I could share some of that insight today.
Great. Natanja, thanks so much. And welcome to all of our guests. I'm very, very grateful. Based on our preliminary conversations, I am confident we are going to have a great event today. I do want to remind everybody, obviously, we are talking about social justice, and a lot of those social justice concerns do create that community trauma. Today is a very sensitive conversation, and we just want to keep that in mind as we are bringing things up. And for our folks in the audience, as you're listening, we certainly respect that, and we just want to let you know that we're going to be as sensitive as we can to those tough topics. If you need to take a break and shut it off, obviously that's wonderful, and we want to encourage you to take care of yourself. We encourage conversation in the chat, so feel free to do that. I have to introduce my colleague and my friend, Carly Davis. So Carly has her camera off, running this from behind the scenes. She is a real superstar, and really she is the skeleton, she is the foundation, she is the reason why Pride in Our Workplace can be so successful. And I truly appreciate it. She will be moderating your questions as they come, and she'll sort of feed them to me so I can share your thoughts and your questions with our panelists as we move along. So don't be shy. If something's going along, thanks, appreciate that. So now we're going to jump right in. So this question is really open for everybody. I feel like everybody has some really interesting thoughts around this, but we've discussed bills and the social injustices currently targeting the LGBTQ plus and marginalized communities in this country. In the midst of this challenging climate, how do you maintain your resilience in your advocacy work, particularly when things may move slowly or even in reverse to the progress that we, or you in particular, have been working towards? How do you really keep up that positive attitude? And I'll call on someone. Why don't we start with Adrianna? Why don't you go first?
Thanks, Cheryl. Yeah, a couple things. One is being in community with other people that are doing the work. It feels so good to just be among people who know what you're talking about, who know what you're experiencing, who understand those interpersonal things that you have to navigate and how you have to center yourself. Just for me, being in community with people who know what that understand, what that is like is helpful. And in those spaces, acknowledgement can happen. For me, acknowledgement of what's happened. Like, did you hear that? Can you I need that. And so being in community, I'm able to foster that with other people and also be that space for them too. And I could also unpack and process what I'm experiencing. Someone who's gone through that experience themselves, who has navigated what I have navigated because we share some of the same identities. It's really helpful. And also history. No revolution happened in a day. If you look back, it's taken decades, and I'm someone who loves something to happen tomorrow. We've identified the issue, this is how we can change it. Why can't it happen right away? That's something that took me a while to navigate, and knowing history and someone making me aware of that, look at how these things happened in the past. That doesn't mean it should happen at that rate, but just help manage your expectations. And also just being real with myself. Giving myself permission to unplug and say no and to disagree and to not be resilient sometimes because it's hard to be, and just naming that. And for me, naming that, there are times where I want to not be resilient and not be able to come back kind of helps build capacity to be back in that place for me. So just being real with myself.
I love that response. I particularly I think of you as such a strong, powerful, and resilient person. I know you're human, but that's the way you come across. And I think it's great that you share your vulnerability about hey, there are times where I just have to all right, I'm not going to be at my best for a little bit, however that sort of manifests for you. And you give yourself your space to do that. Because if I say to myself, oh, sometimes Adrianna needs to take a little break. Oh, I'm okay, well, I guess I could be in that same human category as Adrianna. So that's good. That's just really great that you share that vulnerability. Thanks.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Natanja, would you like to go next and sort of comment personally on that stuff?
I'm so sorry. Sometimes I'm writing because I'm when I'm on panels, I feel like I'm also learning. So I apologize if you see me taking notes, but I'm also just a huge fan of Adrianna's. I think I can listen to her talk all day. So anyways, for me, I think it's three things. It's education and awareness on my part as an ally. It is the fight for liberation, quite frankly, and how that links to the work that I'm doing. And then it's love. And I can give just quick examples. So as I mentioned, when I was coming into the conversation, I'm a cis woman, right? And so I know that my experiences have been very different from those of my nieces and my nephews. And I'll get to love in a second, and I'll talk about them and what they've taught me. But for me, as I think about being an ally, it is also about, it's about listening. It's about knowing when to be at the table. It's knowing when to give up my seat at the table. And it's also knowing when I don't even need to be in the room. And so I think that's something that is really important for allies to understand. The other is trans Black women. When I think about my work, as I've been thinking about my work for years and years and years, I have always centered trans Black women because I actually think that they are the most endangered. And I think if we could create a world where they are safe, then we will all be safer. And so I continue to center them in the work that I do and in my heart and the love that I have for the queer community. And then love comes into play for me because I have watched my niece, Jules, go through her own transition. And I have always said that in watching her go through her transition, knowing that the world is against her, knowing that everyone had thoughts and energy around why, we had lots of questions as a family, and watching her A, educate us, but B, continue to move into the body that felt right for her, has showed me what real self-love looks like, and it has taught me how to be more courageous and more thoughtful. And when we are in spaces together, I can pick up on Jules's nervousness. We went to a GLAD event very quickly. This is about 3 years ago. And it was so hard for me always to get Jules out. I always invite younger people because I need their energy and also for them to tell me what the song is that they're playing. And so I was like, Jules, come with me. And so she finally decided to come. And she was fine the whole time. Like I could see her energy just start to like, I could tell that she was relaxing. And then she got home and she called me and she was just bawling. And I was like, Jules, what's wrong? And I was like, oh God, I pushed too hard. And she said, I have never felt so safe in an environment like since I have transitioned. And I was just like, well, that's a problem. I'm so happy for you, and that's a problem. So that is how I continue to center her.
You're gonna make me cry. Thank you so much, Natanja. That is a great story. Really appreciate it. I love your sense of allyship as well, and I really, really appreciate it. I feel like I run into folks who are allies by accident. God bless them. That's great. Like, oh, okay, I can support that. That's great. And then to really connect with someone who is so thoughtful and clear about it, and still not taking it for granted, and really understanding that it's an action verb every day. It is just so wonderfully refreshing, and I really appreciate your support. Thanks. All right, Ev, you're batting cleanup. That's a little baseball reference there for you.
No, and I just want to lift up all of the things that both Adrianna and Natanja said, because both of you offered such important insights. And especially Adrianna, when you talked about not wanting to be resilient, whew, that hit home for me. Cheryl, you asked us, how do you maintain a positive attitude? I don't. It's really hard to do that all of the time. And Adrianna, your comment on just being real with yourself and allowing whatever feelings are coming up for you to exist, and not saying, I have to push those away. I think that so many of us who are fighting for a better world have some degree of saviorism. And that looks like a lot of different things for a lot of different people. But for so many of us, we have this idea that, like, if I'm not doing this, no one else is going to do it. And there's this concept. I'm a singer. I was in choirs for a really long time. And this is something that I've seen floating around in kind of an allegory for how we can maintain some resilience and some longevity in this work, is when you hear a choir singing a really, really long note, every individual singer is dropping out at different point to fill themselves back up with air, to fill themselves back up with the resources that they need to continue this beautiful collective action. And so reminding ourselves that going slow is okay, that taking breaks is not only okay, but it's what we have to do if we're going to continue doing this work. Another thing that I think is really important that Natanja commented on is remembering our whys. I have a little sticky note that I have, usually my desk is a mess right now, I'm not going to show it to you, but that I usually have in view of the people that I do this work for. And it's for me, because I deserve a better world. We all deserve a better world. Even the folks who have the most privilege amongst us deserve a better world. I think about being a white person. I am not the targeted recipient of the oppression of white supremacy, and I am still living under a system of power and control. And when we break that, we all get more free. And it says, this young trans man that was in a congregation that I was a part of for a while, it says trans Black women. So again, remembering and grounding ourselves in our North Stars, why we're doing this work, I think can also be really helpful. And then I want to also continue lifting up something that Natanja said of that kind of North Star of who are the folks in our community who experience the most marginalization. And I would encourage any attendees who have not read the Combahee River Collective Statement to check that out. The Combahee River Collective Statement was a group of Black lesbians in Boston in the 70s. And one of the quotes that I have written says, if Black women were free, it would mean that everyone else would have to be free. So just reminding ourselves that when we do center those amongst us who experience the most multi-directional oppression, it benefits all of us. And just remember, honestly, if you leave her with one thing, take naps if you can. There's a really great book called Rest for Resistance that has just come out that I highly, highly recommend for folks.
That's great, Ev. I think that's wonderful advice, and I love how you synthesized your thoughts in that last thing by saying take a nap. But let me tell you what everybody's really going to take away. They're going to take away that choir analogy, because that was wonderful. Natanja, what role do you think philanthropy has in your community engagement efforts? And, how do you earn buy-in from your leadership to scale those types of investments?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. And I just want to start with saying that I am in a situationship with philanthropy. So if I come off talking and it seems that I'm a little bit negative, it's because I am a little bit negative about the sector.
But that's okay. I'll try to balance you out, because I make my living in philanthropy, so that's a good thing.
I appreciate it. I like balance. But the truth is, identity funds like the Boston Women's Fund or the Equality Fund or the Trans Emergency Fund would not have to exist if mainstream philanthropy was actually being equitable. But here we are, right? And when I think about, what philanthropy can do, I think we need to move with the same urgency and innovation that we moved with when we were working through COVID-19. I think that we have not centered or thought about the issues that our queer, LGBTQ, trans communities are going through in a way that has felt like it is centering their humanity. I think for me, when I'm sitting in rooms that are mostly cisgender, it feels like it's an afterthought. And I think that's why for us at the Boston Women's Fund, it was really important for us to, we used to have the women with an X, and my whole family just thought we were spelling women wrong. We had an asterisk by the woman, and then there was like a title that this also includes, right? LGBTQ. And then I was just like, well, if we're including them, then let's include them, right? Like, so I think being explicit is incredibly important and bringing people along in that. I also think that they have to be in leadership roles, right? They have to be on we need you on our boards, right? We need you to help guide us. We need you to tell us when we have overstepped or when we have dismissed or when we can show up differently. And I think that has seemed to be incredibly important. Over at the Boston Women's Fund, we have really have been paying attention over the last few months that there's been over 300 anti-LGBTQIA plus bills have been introduced at state levels, right? And the fact that that's not like shocking or surprising to the sector in a way that we're moving differently or we're centering the voices of those that are experiencing this differently. And I'm just going to say one thing, right? I remember sitting on a panel with, it was about incarceration. This is years back with Dr. John Jackson of SHOT. And he said, one Black man in the White House does not make up for millions in our jail system. And I would say the same for Massachusetts. One gay woman who is in the state house does not make up or share the experience of hundreds, if not thousands, of our LGBTQ community having very, very different experiences than our Governor Haley. And that is nothing against her. But I think that when we start to really think about that and we centering the voices of those most impacted, I think we would move at a different pace. So that is what I would add to that.
Tanya, those are great comments. I love how you talk about our governor right now. And I feel one of the things that I think happens sometimes is people take those exemplar, whether that's a Black man in the White House or a lesbian woman as the governor, they take those exemplar moments and they use them to sort of justify not thinking equitably about philanthropy or anything else really for that matter. I point out all the time, folks, I'm really cognizant when I do any sort of public speaking for the trans community. I try to say like, yeah, today I'm representing, but I am not representative. Like, I don't want anybody to leave here saying like, oh, I met this woman, Cheryl, she's trans, she seems to be doing fine. I think all that's overblown. Like, whoa, time out, no way. It's hard. Like we want to hold up those exemplar moments, but also not lose sight of really what's going on with the majority of folks. Adrianna, I want to ask this next question for you. What practices have you implemented to make sure that Boston Pride for the People services and resources reached marginalized community and this is for everybody, but for you in particular, I think that's a great opportunity to sort of share the Boston Pride for the People story as it relates to making sure that we're reaching marginalized folks.
Yeah, thanks, Cheryl. Really, we're making sure that the needs and priorities of community is what's informing and shaping and driving our efforts. And that starts in our actions, which are grounded in our mission, which have 4 main principles, which is commemorating our history, all of it, all of our histories, and really educating, that's the second, people on that history, and also the experiences that we experience individually in our identities, and folks who might experience multiple forms of marginalization or just multiple forms of experience based on the different identities we hold. So commemoration, education, celebration. We are awesome people. So really spreading that joy and allowing everyone else to see that. And those core tenets really allow us to we ground everything in that mission. So if we're trying to engage and reach a specific group of people within the LGBTQIA plus community, we ground it in those tenets. And also we ask questions. We own what we don't know so that we don't enter spaces with the energy of knowing. We allow there to be space for there to know. So we have a committee that's focused on community engagement, and we have sessions with different populations of people, like the leaders of our LGBT groups. We're aiming to have one for our aging and elder adults. And we're having these individual conversations so that people can really give us that specific insight for their individual groups and populations. We provide the scaffolding that really allows our community to shape what we're doing, and we don't move on our own understanding. We really invite people into that process. And there are individuals and people and stakeholders and leaders in our communities who have the knowledge and the trusting relationships with who we're trying to engage with. And we ask ourselves, how do we invite those individuals into this process? It's about us as an organization building those relationships, but it's also honoring who already has those relationships, who's already doing that great work, and aligning and empowering and engaging them to continue to do it more.
And we're all so looking forward to it. I love the way that Pride for the People, Boston Pride for the People has been built, and it is going to be super exciting to actually re-experience Pride again in that big community. Thanks. The conversations that we're having about social justice and maintaining that pacing, as well as community trauma and being sensitive to those things, this conversation is something that has been evolving. We did sort of talk about that a little bit, but everything that everyone is sharing at this stage is a work in progress themselves. The best practices, it's not like there's a textbook that we can take off the shelf and say, oh, this is the way this is supposed to work. This is how we are learning. So we are in the process of developing that textbook. So I just sort of want to remind everybody of that in this process as we go through the conversations today. That's where everybody is sort of coming from. And we want to give each other the grace to go and do those things and sometimes make mistakes. And then we also want to hold each other accountable to make sure that we are doing the best we can for all of these communities. Great. Ev, I have one more question for you, and then we're going to sort of pivot and go to another section of our discussion. But Ev, what are the DEI advocacy do you believe have the greatest potential to change or energize in 2003? How do you plan to contribute to those efforts, that kind of thing? What do you see as sort of on the horizon?
Yeah, and I'm going to specifically think about what this looks like in workplaces. I
Thanks.
think that one of the biggest challenges is aligning organizational values and missions with organizational activities, behaviors, and cultures. I see a lot of disconnect both in my work at MaeBright and my work at Trinity Boston Connects of organizations that really have great values. They want to treat people equitably. They want to lift up folks with marginalized backgrounds, and all leadership is white. All of the folks doing direct service are Black and brown. And also the benefits that come with those different jobs really exist differently. So I think that really kind of asking the hard questions of where are we not aligning with what we aspire to be And then what would it take to make that alignment more concrete, to make that alignment feel more real, especially in the existences of folks with the most marginalized identities at the organization. The founding director of the program that I worked at TBC, Rebecca Jackson, would always tell us our client is the most marginalized person in an organization. The leadership may be the folks who are bringing us in, but they're not actually the folks who we're as worried about. One of the things that TBC did was a white supremacy culture audit at the end of meetings. So there's a number of different tools that we can put in place to kind of just check ourselves and hold ourselves accountable to those values that we want to see come into existence. Because again, a lot of nonprofits, and again, I talk mainly in the nonprofit sphere, but a lot of nonprofits have a real disconnect between their mission and values and the way that their employees, especially who are lower on the org chart, get treated.
Oh, so true. I'm amazed by the idea of let me see if I get the phrasing right. White supremacy cultural audit. Is that right? I think that most companies do that like at least once a month. I think that's a pretty standard practice.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's not countercultural at all.
Right. That's an amazing statement, and I just imagine that in so many workplace environments, and I'm like, wow, that would turn people on their head if they were actually being asked to do something like that, and if they actually were able to put the work in, the reflective work, to really understand that stuff. That's got to be a real muscle that is not often flexed. It's great. Well, good. We're going to pivot a little bit more as we move away from this sort of opening topic, the sort of opening chapter of our discussion. Does anybody have anything that they wanted to ask ask our panelists, or any panelists have an extra thought that they wanted to share?
There's a question in the Q&A that I can respond to quickly if...
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so the question says, do you have advice for how cis people can push back on casual transphobia? I've encountered a lot of soft transphobes and want to shift them away from that without making them retrench. And I think your instincts are really, really good on this. It can be really hard to address the way that folks are operating in oppressive ideologies without automatically making their defense mechanisms go up. So one of the ways that I address this is turning to a touchstone from the Center of Courage and Renewal that says, when the going gets rough, turn to wonder. Put another way, don't get furious, get curious. So ask them a little bit, hey, why do you hold that value? Can you tell me a little bit more? If it's a joke, why is that funny? I don't get it. Can you explain it to me? If you can invite people to do the work themselves and have them have that light bulb moment of, oh, what I said, again, doesn't align with the values that I hold, that is often a lot more effective than just jumping on someone and attacking them. I think that when we are the ones who are experiencing oppression, we get to respond in whatever ways feel best for us. But if you are acting in the capacity of an ally, I really encourage you to meet the person where they are and be gentle and invite them to come back to the values that you collectively hold.
I love that. Natanja, you're really responding to Ev's facially.
Yeah. I love that too. I think gentleness is often needed, but I also think a little hard, tough love is also appropriate at times. And I think it depends on, I think about this all the time, is like, how much time do I want to invest in this person? Like, is this a person that I'm keeping around for a very long time and I need them to kind of come along because that's when like the bringing them along works for me? Or is this a person I need to check in the moment so that they understand clearly where my values lie and how we're not aligned and that I was offended by a comment? I think there's assessments that you have to do of the relationship. But I do love, like, don't get furious, get curious. I often get furious and then I have to count like down to 10 in my head and I'm smiling at them and I'm like, oh, this. And then I come through with what I hope is like a fully formed thought that helps us move to the next, or invite them to be part of conversations, or, but I don't think everyone deserves to be brought along, if I'm just being honest.
Great. There are two other questions in the chat. I'm going to keep us moving. It's 12:33. We got plenty of time. So I'm just letting folks know that I see your questions and I'm not gonna miss them. But Ev, I'm so glad you took time to address that one in particular. Thanks. All right. So now we're going to talk about driving change in the workplace or in organizational structure. It really won't be long until Pride Month is here. And for each of our panelists, I'd love it if you could describe one action that we can take to hold ourselves to a high standard of being authentic allies organizationally and individually. And anybody can just sort of answer this, jump right in.
I would say be open, and more specifically, be open to noticing things. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable, really uncomfortable to notice things, and yet very, very powerful. And to be comfortable enough to notice things, you have to be in a space of being authentic, humble, non-performative. And to give an example, and this is a colleague of mine who I have a very close relationship with. And as we were building this relationship, we were doing a presentation together on work that we were doing. And the individual took the initiative to identify who might discuss what topic. And as we were sitting there about to present, they turned to me and they said, "Oh my gosh, I think I chose this because of your identities and not necessarily because of what you could offer in the presentation. And I just noticed it now. And I need to tell you right before we go up, just in case you want to do something different." That meant so much to me. Like that awareness, the openness to be aware to it, the courage to acknowledge, and the openness to make a change. We were literally about to go on stage and this person was like, "I will change it now and we will just make it work." That is powerful. Just being open to those moments. It could be as small as changing, something that your bias would have chosen you to do and contribute to like this greater, I think it was Ev earlier that said like, we all in some ways contribute to white supremacy. You didn't say that, but in addressing it, we all benefit from it. And so just a small action, like just notice, you don't even have to say it. In my book, like the fact that I love to hear it, of course, because it meant a lot. But if you just to yourself are like, that's perpetuating something that I don't want to perpetuate. Wow, I did that. I don't want to do that next time. That's huge.
I love the way you shared that, Adrianna, because I really do believe like that's the courage of us to, so much of this work is self-reflection. And if you have the courage to self-reflect, that's like step one, and then share it and have that kind of safe space with your colleagues to be able to do it. It's really a wonderful story. I'm so glad you shared it. There are a couple of questions in the chat that I want to sort of work in and give you a chance to talk about. You might have sort of already answered them.
Yeah, I'd love to address them right now. Is it okay if I read them aloud? And
yeah, sure.
So thank you for the first question. How do you envision the Boston Pride experience under the new leadership of Boston Pride for the People? What changes is your team working to implement? We are working to implement a very sacred space that is inclusive, that's anti-racist, that is community-led, non-commercial. We want everyone to feel physically and psychologically safe in that space. We're trying to promote that. And we talked about history earlier, and revolution's not happening in a day as much as I would like that. And so we're mindful of that, but we're promoting that work. And how we're promoting that work, we're building an organization that will have structure and policies in place that enable this inclusivity and anti-racism. It starts there. We're modeling it in our behaviors, in our meetings, how we engage with other people, how we invite people into this process of planning. We've tried our hardest to really make this community informed and community led and not moving unilaterally. And these are all things that I don't think people experienced in the past with our parade and festival in Boston. And it's really what we're trying to promote.
I think that you addressed both of those questions. The second question is certainly along the same lines. If there's anything that is distinct about the second question that I might ask you to, if you can shine a spotlight on.
I'll just read it aloud for folks for which it might be helpful. How are you addressing racism within the queer community? I'm with Pride Worcester. Our leadership has shifted from all white to majority POC. As a result, there is a group within the community attempting to place obstacles in front of our new structures. I'm sorry to hear that. And it can become demoralizing. what we are aiming to do, just to add to what I said, is to prevent and disable and disrupt those things from being able to happen, those instances from being able to happen. And it's in our behavior, it's in our leadership. We want our leadership to represent our entire community as much as possible, whether it's on our board, whether it's on our community committees, whether it's on our advisory groups. So we're really looking to uplift and engage everyone and center the experiences of people for which their experiences haven't been centered. And that's experience in the LGBTQIA+ community as well. We have our different experiences in navigating and addressing equity. I love these questions, and I'm like, let's talk more. So if you all are interested, Adrianna at bp4tp.org. I love having conversations like these, and I want to continue to engage you. And I'd love to talk about Worcester Proud and how we could support each other. So reach out.
You are so great. I love the reel, even though it was a very short, you could talk for hours on it, I know. But the ability for you to give very concrete, this is what we're doing, I think that's particularly helpful to everybody. Then they've got to sort of take it to their own space, whether it's a workplace environment or a nonprofit that they're volunteering for. But that really concrete, this is the steps we're taking, is super, super helpful. Thanks for sharing those. Natanja, do you have something that you would like to talk about that you are going to hold up for Pride Month around your allyship?
Yeah, of course. First of all, I'm so excited about Pride Month. I have watched over the last couple of years how it is changing, and Black and Brown folks are being centered. So yes. I grew up in the South End, that Bay Area. So I have a lot of experience with seeing how how things have evolved. So first of all, I just wanted to give a shout out there. But I think something that's come up for me is that Pride Month, as important as it is that I think we often are calling on our LGBTQ individuals and folks and family to come to conversations, to be on panels, to perhaps give a workshop. And I just want to remind people that queer people are queer all year long. So yes, June is important, and maybe as allies, we can hold that time for them to celebrate, that this is a month where it's a time for them to get together. And when it is right for us to be included, we get to go to the Pride Parade or other things. But let's not burden them with in 1 month with everything that is Pride. Pride is not just about 1 month. They are proud in July and in August and in September, and you get the point. So that's just one thing I would add. The other is that let's not mistake pride for progress, right? That there is so much work for us to do, especially as allies, and that pride is incredibly important, but what we should be holding on to and what we should be working on is the policy changes, the HR changes, and the belonging, not even the inclusivity, but the belonging of our queer family, friends, in the workplace. So that's what I would suggest. I know that, and I want to say, I'm saying this because I have been there. I have been the one to ask, and I don't want to be that person anymore. And I want to be an ally that holds Pride Month sacred to the celebration, and to the history of queer folks. So that's what I'll add to that.
Thanks, Natanja. Really, really great stuff. When I think about Pride, one of the things that I just want to share my own little quick thought, but to me, I feel like the folks in the LGBTQIA community have really received so much oppression and aggression and all of these issues, that Pride is really the moment where folks get a chance to expel a lot of that stuff. And for folks who are cis and straight, and you look around and you see the amount of pride flags and progress flags and all of these celebrations all over the place at Target and, at big, huge events, all of that stuff, that is answering a need. And so you can quantify the damage and the need for the healing by simply counting the rainbows during Pride Month, because each rainbow, each public expression of pride is like a little antidote for all the shame and stigma that someone has endured. And so when you see all that, you're like, oh my gosh, this is what people, like, this is a manifestation of how much damage there has been done in the community over a person's life. It's why somebody who is, 60 years old and has been, out their entire life still gets such affirmation by going to their local Pride event, because they're still purging the damage that they received younger in their life or still day to day. And when you think of it in that context, I just think, and you take your comments, Natanja, and to think about all of that stuff together, and it is all year long. There's no question about it, but I like the manifestation of seeing it all at once, because it's like wonderful and a little bit, when you think of it that way, a little sad at the same time. Ev, what are your comments? What are your thoughts around this topic around pride?
Yeah, so I'm so glad that Natanja said what she said, because that's a great segue into what I'm going to say, which is when you do inevitably do all of your LGBTQ events in June, pay people and pay them well. This is emotional labor. We know that trans folks experience twice the unemployment rate of the national average. We know that the only group within the LGBTQ community that makes above average income is white cis gay men. Everyone else makes lower than average income. We are an under-resourced and underemployed and underfunded community. There's some meme that is going around that says, like, I'm a therapist and I can tell you what people actually need more than therapy is money. That's true. Especially in a capitalist society where taking care of yourself costs money. In this last month and a half of deep trans antagonism, I have ordered delivery food far more than I have other times, because I just didn't have capacity. I knew that if I was going to eat, it wasn't going to be because I made something. So, and again, I'm so glad I have this platform right now, because I get to say one of my biggest pet peeves. You cannot do an LGBTQ 101 in 1 hour. You cannot do it. If you are trying to fit an LGBTQ 101 in an hour, and that is all your budget or time allows, that tells me where your priorities lie. So if you actually want to do this work, commit to doing this work in a way that is actually successful and makes an actual impact and is not just about checking a box. Because that's what so many organizations, especially the ones that only do something during Pride Month, they're checking a box. And that doesn't actually create tangible results for either your employees or the folks who are accessing your services who are LGBTQ. Okay, and soapbox.
No, that's wonderful. And I'm just going to take a little moment and give you a little emotional hug, because that's what we need sometimes. So I want to get into, we only have a few minutes left. We'll certainly try to fit in any more questions, but I do want to get to this particular piece, which is, what are some ways that you, the panelists, have had success or would suggest others deal with resistance from your leadership of your organization? When folks are pushing back, against, well, this is all we have is 1 hour for this. Isn't that great? Like 2 years ago, you didn't even have an hour. Like, how do you push back against that kind of resistance?
So saying no is one of the most powerful things that you can do. And as someone who visibly has a lot of privileged identities, one of the things that I try to be really thoughtful about is, how am I making it easier for people to say no to me? And how am I not? So that's something that I offer all of you, especially those of you who do hold more privileged identities. How are you making it easier for people to say no to you? So, I think that there's a lot of different ways that we can approach resistant leadership, but, there's the carrot and the stick, right? So luckily in Massachusetts, there are a number of laws that require organizations to provide to have non-discrimination protections for all members of the LGBTQ community in basically all areas that could be legally protected. But, I think there's also, saying, approaching it with kind of a positive psychology approach of, we hold these values, and we were kind of having a little bit of this conversation earlier, the difference between calling out and calling in. You know your leadership best, and you know which of those two strategies might work best to get the end results that you're looking for. So really saying, I know we hold these collective values. I'm inviting you to come back to the collective values that I know you hold. I know you care about this stuff. So let's put that into action. But I'm also very curious to hear what my other co-panelists have to say on this.
Great stuff. I love the call in, call out, and giving people the judgment, like letting people follow their own judgment around how they need to navigate that stuff. Natanja, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I think, so first of all, let me just bring our founding mothers into this conversation. Kip Tierney was one of them. And I don't think we were using words like non-binary, but I would imagine that maybe Kip was, rocking a non-binary identity. I think that we often say at the Boston Foundation, this came from another founding mother, that a lot of funds start with their donor base, and we started with our values. And it was no mistake that we center, our priorities are our people. So that's the LGBTQIA+ community, that's trans women specifically, Black and Brown, low income, immigrants, refugees, young people, elders, right? People who have mostly been left out of mainstream philanthropy. So for us, if I am facing resistance, I do go back to our values. I go back not only to the values that we have today and the changes that we're making today to be a better ally, a better employer, but also 40 years ago, who we were and what we were trying to do to disrupt a system that wasn't working for us. So I think it is about values. I do think it's about humanity. And so it is for me, the way that I have helped people along. And then it's also, I'm going to continue to say this, it's about making sure that people are in leadership positions so that when these conversations are coming up, that leaders are able to speak from their own lived experience. And Natanja doesn't have to be the ally, right? That they're in the room already. And so shout out to a board member of ours, Chastity Bowick, who always reminds me that her seat is that she's not here just to perform, that she's here for progress. And so she's continuously pushing the Boston Women's Fund, and I appreciate that. So again, I think those are the ways, at least, that we have been able to push up against resistance.
Oh, so well said. I'm so glad that you put a spotlight on that. Extra shout out to Chastity. Great stuff. Adrianna, what are your thoughts? And then we're going to go, after your thoughts, Adrianna, we're going to go around and do some final comments for each of our panelists, and we're really getting ready to wrap it up. We want to let everybody get back to their work day. I hope everybody has had a wonderful lunch while we had this great conversation. So we'll do some final comments, but where do you think, how do you deal with resistance from leadership, Adrianna?
I just want to say, Ev, thank you so much for noting that you are intentional about creating a space where people can say no to you. I feel like people talk a lot about, well, people need to take the initiative. People aren't empowered, and there's not stuff in place for them to feel empowered. So there are some identities that come with empowerment, and there's some that aren't. And those that aren't, they require infrastructure and mechanisms to build it. And if that doesn't exist, how can we accept someone to feel empowered? So I myself and all the identities I hold with the individuals I work with on my team in general and interns that I work with, I think about that in my own identities. And it means so much to me to hear that you are doing the same thing, because it really helps. And I think others need to kind of think about dynamics, our identities, and just different levels that we're at, and how that contributes to someone being able to say no or challenge or continue the conversation. Love that. And also asking questions and being aware. When I've been in those spaces, I've said, like using the example of the LGBTQ plus 101. So you would like one training for identities of these many people to be applied to this specific work in an hour, and your purpose for what outcome do you expect to, like really asking more questions. Being able to do that requires being empowered. And I just want to say that it requires being empowered to ask those questions. So I want to acknowledge those questions are helpful, and it takes being empowered and feeling empowered to do that.
So good, Adrianna, wonderful. No surprise. All right, my friends, I have enjoyed every ounce of this conversation, and I tried really hard to squeeze out all the little mental gems that you have and all those little learning nuggets that you had to share with us. However, you might have one more little nugget in there that says, hey, these are my closing thoughts. And if you're going to remember something, try to remember this. Or here's a thing to take home with you and something to try. If you have one of those thoughts, and I hope that you do, I want to go around and we'll just let everybody have your final closing thoughts as one of our panelists. Ev, I'm going to start with you. We're going to go through the same cycle because we just ended with Adrianna. We'll go through that same cycle so everyone knows where they are in the turn. Ev, you're up.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm also trying to get better at self-promotion. There's my email address. If anyone needs LGBTQ consulting, please do reach out. I think that cis folks, we need you. We really desperately need you. Things are really bad right now for trans folks and non-binary folks. And one of the most important things for all of us who are committed to creating a better world is figuring out where and what we are uniquely suited to contribute to that creation. Each of us brings something different to the table and to this work. And it's possible to find where we fit in this work that doesn't feel like a burden all of the time, that actually does give us joy and give us meaning. So I encourage you to spend some time, especially those of you who are allies, think about where you fit into this work in a way that feels doable and sustainable. And also, if you manage folks with marginalized identities that are deeply under attack, give them time off. Give them half a day, give them a day off. Say, hey, I know things are bad right now. Can I offer you like the afternoon or this whole day off? Because again, we need time to rest. We need time to recuperate. We need time to turn our brains off. So again, thank you, Pride in Our Workplace. Thank you, Cheryl, co-panelists. You are amazing. I'm honored to share space with you. So thank you everyone for being here.
Great comments. Thanks, Ev. Natanja?
Yeah, what an honor it has been. I think every time I'm invited to a space like this, I am reminded of the work that I have to do as an ally. So thank you for that. Adrianna, thank you. And Cheryl, thank you. I am still on a journey. So please don't reach out to me thinking that I have all the answers. The truth is I mess up all the time. So I just want to just start there. Reach out to me. I'm always looking to build relationships, but don't think that I'm an expert. I come to this as a continuous learner and student and how to show up for people that I love. There's a quote that I live by literally, and it says, if you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. And that is how I live my life. That is how I think about my allyship. I believe that our injustices are linked as much as our liberation. And when we begin to think that way, we will begin to have movements that are bigger and more impactful than they have been. I am here. I am here as I want to be used. So if there's a way that you can use me, and I'm speaking to my queer community directly, if there's a way that I can be used as an ally, call me up. The answer will not be no. I may need some coaching, but I will absolutely answer the call because I know that that is part of the work that I have to do on behalf of all of us. So just really grateful. Thanks again for allowing me to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful closing thoughts. Thank you so much. Adrianna.
Yes, I'm just, again, so grateful to be here with you all. Thank you for your presence and your connection. And something that you mentioned, Natanja, I want to share a mantra that's close to me too. It's an African proverb, very close to what you mentioned and describes our interconnectedness. It's called Ubuntu, and it means I am because you are. And it describes how our freedom and connection are all bound in one another. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to again mention our principles, the tenets of Boston Pride for the People. It's connected to my own personal mission, but also our mission as an organization. Commemorate the history we came from and how that shaped where we're going. Educate on our experiences in our world, to educate, commemorate, celebrate the joy that we bring into this world, educate, commemorate, celebrate, and empower. We've talked about empowerment this entire time and how that fuels the work that we're doing and how it can support us really including and working with each other better. Thank you.
Adrianna, thank you so much. Ev, Natanja, what a wonderful discussion. I am so grateful to have been a part of it. One thing I want to raise up my final comment, give myself a second for final comments. As we do this work and as we talk about all of those folks that are in that space, I want to put a special spotlight on my non-binary siblings. Those of us who are trans, sometimes we have a certain amount of passing privilege or a certain amount of, at least I understand what's going on with them. And then there are those folks who are just queer in their, their very makeup, and they are always out, and that carries extra burden. And the whole they, them is a thing that folks grab a hold of and use to hurt people. And so I just want an extra special spotlight on non-binary folks and the weight that they end up carrying. Those are my thoughts. And then a little plug. Thanks so much. Look at your awesome folks on this side and your awesome communities and organizations on this side. Boston Pride for the People, Boston Women's Fund, Fenway Health. That's so nice. Adrianna and I are colleagues at Fenway. MaeBright, Ev, phenomenal. Thanks so much to everything that everybody does. I hope that everybody in the audience takes a moment to connect to our panelists on LinkedIn, reach out to them, make sure you have a little bit of chit chat so that when you run into each other at the Pride Festival or at some other community gathering, you get a chance to give them the hug that they deserve today if we were all in person. Thanks so much for participating in Pride in Our Workplace. We're going to have these highlights in the next couple of, 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks, and more signature events, more opportunities for for companies to benefit from the work that we do and maybe be a sponsor. So we hope to see you at future Pride in Our Workplace events. Thanks to all of our sponsors. Have a great afternoon. Enjoy the good weather. Take care.